and she never be pretending. Nothing is real. She gon' tell you what she bought it, cause she know you can't afford it. Know you can get it. Looking exquisite, no competition. Stay on the pivot. Who be watching, they be plotting. She so motherfucking independent. Mama be big, got on her grind. She had to get out her mama house. Daddy be tripping, now she be whipping. Ain't no more on granny couch. Fashion over, got that air looking different. Make me wanna put her.
Hello and welcome everyone to the E-Spot with Camille. I am your host, Camille Cower, and I'm so excited for you guys to meet today's guest. He went from gangsta rap to Hasidic Orthodox Jewish rapper, and I just can't wait to find out how those two worlds came about, because you went from D Black to Nissim Black. So tell us, how did that transition go about? And thank you for being my guest today.
Thank you for having me on first. And the transition was very a very interesting one, but it was very, very much so difficult. It wasn't as fast as you just said it, right? So
No.
it was
Which took a couple of times.
Right. It definitely was a journey. You know, really, I just I've always had a very, very deep soul, very, very deep soul. Always been, and I've always been interested in knowing more about God, knowing more about the things that we can't see. I've always been that type of person. So this will manifest itself after I found myself into a world of just complete darkness in the other rap world, the more secular rap world, and running with street guys. I was a part of a gang as a kid. By this time, I wasn't so much gang banging, but I found myself back in these type of environments after, running away from it the first time. Found myself back into this hole, and I ended up in a kill or be killed situation with another rapper, and that made me really start thinking, and it made me reflect on God and the things that were really important for me in life. And so after I was able to settle that situation and put that beef behind me, thank God I'm alive, the other person's alive. And after I realized that the coast was clear, so to speak, I started to really evaluate my life and the way that I was living. And I just went on this journey of trying to find more, just like more than what I knew. and my knowledge base was pretty well in terms of Islam. I was a Muslim as a kid. My grandfather was a Sunni Muslim. I converted to Christianity. I was 13 because of I was a part of a missionary group, and Judaism happened when I was away from everybody, when I was just alone, and I was able to pick up the text for myself and start doing my own research. And I fell in love with the Bible from a different perspective, and I wanted to go deeper. I wanted to know what things meant. What did they mean in Hebrew? What book, what language was it written in? Who was first? Which religion was first? How did this happen? How did it come to be? So I started digging very deep. And I think what happens is, naturally, as a person, at least I know for myself, as you make a transformation, everything about you makes a transformation. Not even as extreme as, and I say extreme only to say that it's not something that I was familiar with seeing, obviously, growing up, somebody convert to Judaism, right? But not even as extreme as that.
It's not very common in the Black community as well. Right. So even on that standpoint, to go from, it's like so many different transitions with that in different language as well. So it's so interesting to hear it directly from you, how you went about it. Yeah.
Right. So you naturally begin to change the way that you think, the way that you talk, the way that you speak. Even if a person, say he goes he becomes a stronger Christian or becomes a Christian, even then the language of a person changes. It goes from street talking to church talk. Things start to change about the individual. So going to Judaism, everything starts to change. And so the natural progression was the music also changed. D Black no longer is around, and Nissim comes. As I made my transformation on the inside, it started to reflect outward.
Yeah, and speak a little bit about how that transition was, as well, in the sense of, like, I feel like hip hop has changed a lot as well, where it used to be a lot more that it was explaining what kind of circumstances they were trying to escape,
right,
or even make it more fun. And so, like, today's music, it's emphasizing all the wrong things. Like, it's promoting such negative stereotypes and kind of encouraging that kind of lifestyle. And your music is so different from that. Was there ever any pushback or any, I guess, from your team or so on, like, don't go religion, stick with
Mhm.
this is what sells, keep doing the gangbang stuff. Like,
Right.
was there ever that conversation had, and how did you bring them over to the lighter topics?
So it was very interesting because when I decided to change initially, nobody really knew what was going to happen, you know? I think the first thing that really like had influenced me was not to necessarily say that the record was so positive, but there was a record by Little Brother, Fonte and Pooh. They
From Raleigh, North
Yeah, from
Carolina.
North Carolina. I don't have too much
Yeah.
of a connection. My grandmother was born there. Other than that, but yeah,
Oh wow,
yeah.
see, who knew that
So
same.
so that when that album came out, I think it was their last record together. I don't know, maybe they put one out since I stopped following, but it was called The Get Back. And I remember hearing that record and just like falling in love. It was like I re-fell in love with hip hop. It's like after a while you
Mm.
get into this like mode of constantly hearing the same thing and doing the same thing and the same gangster rap. And what happened was as I was making my transition, spiritually, is when I got a hold of this record. So it made me start rethinking the way that I heard hip hop. And I think that anybody that listens to it, they had a real clear influence on my Aliyah album, which came out after that. I did a song for producer from Seattle, Jake One. He had a very big album called The God. Well, his album was called White Man Music, but I had a song on there called Godlike, and and that was like right in the middle of this transition of me going out of this world and coming into a new world. And I dropped that
Yeah.
record by him, and it was actually a very big record. He had Busta Rhymes on there. He had Young Buck. This is when he was still in G Unit. There was a lot of big names. Little Brother was on there. Pharoah Monch. It was like a real opportunity for me. And everywhere he took it, to DJ Premier, to everybody was like, "Who is this guy?" So that sort of like
Yeah.
put me out there. So it was all interesting because as I'm transforming, like I'm getting more and more like even disgusted with the game. But so I ended up putting out this record, Aliyah, which is like my last album, and I was a little scared because I was like, I think I'm about to lose people because I'm not shooting anybody on here. I'm not
Mhm.
killing. I'm not even cursing. You know, I had already stopped cursing off the record, so it was hard for me to even like make records with cursing on because it wasn't part of my reality anymore. And I've always been like that. I always
Mhm.
want to be where my reality is. And so I put out that, and I was so shocked to see how much more people loved it, how much more fans I had, how much more people appreciated it. So it was very, very interesting. And that record, which I thought was going to be my end, so I did like my retirement party. I thought I was done until like God like called me back to music again. And then and even when I came back, people were just like at the beginning, it's like I think this is just a little too positive. And you gotta go
Wait.
through it. So that was my critique. I'm happy it was that than something else. But and then after a while you find your way and you find your audience and you look for the people that want to hear what you want to talk about. So
Mhm. Now, speak a little bit about that as well, because you mentioned that you were getting disgusted with the game.
mhm.
Can you share a little bit about what that means, as opposed to now what's it like being on the other side of it? Because I'm sure there's other people out there that may be thinking about making that transition of going, like maybe they're tired of promoting and hoeing and gunning and all
Right,
of that stuff
right,
that's being put out there, and you were
right.
welcomed by your group. So can you share a little bit about that as well?
Well, one of the main factors in that also too was around this time me and my wife had found out we were pregnant, and I was going to be having not just a child but a little girl. So,
Mm.
if a person's at least sensitive enough to realize that, the things that you're saying is not only going to affect your own kids, but then it makes you start to think about what about everybody else's little girls? What about everybody else's kids? And so that became a big factor for me and how I made music because I had to start thinking about people's children. I started thinking about my children. What would I want them to hear? What would I want them to reflect in? So, and at that time, like I said, I just got so disgusted because, you know, it was the same thing over and over and over again. You know what I mean? It's just about how much money somebody had. And I don't think it was so much the repetition. It was just much more so like what is this doing for me? How am I going to advance as a human being when I turn this on? You know what I'm saying? What does it make me feel? And if it's not
Mhm.
inclining me to do something good with my life, then why include it in my life? It's like literally listening to that, to modern hip hop music. Not I'm gonna say modern, just modern hip hop music that is going along with the crowd. Everybody knows what type of music we're discussing. Like that is
Mhm.
like inviting and having bad company in your life, telling you constantly to
Mhm.
do the wrong thing. No matter if you
Mhm.
as a person may have a different way that you would like to do things, you're constantly putting bad advice, you know, um, um, bad
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah.
All these different things are constantly being in your space and your environment every time you indulge and involve yourself in that music. So since I wanted to elevate myself, I no longer could listen to this. I can no longer stomach it anymore because it just wasn't in the same direction of where I was going.
No, I love that because I always mention how words have power. And when you just keep repeating those same negative image, same words over and over again, if you're just singing along after a while, you're like, wait, why am I screaming this or dancing around to this? This isn't the
Right,
kind of image I would want my child to emulate, or better
right,
yet, would want for someone to stereotype me as just
right.
based on this kind of music. So hats off to you for that, because
Thank you so much.
I love that you noticed that and wanted to make sure that there were other options so people weren't stuck with only listening to same type of music that, like you mentioned,
Right,
with just giving them bad advice and bad information.
right,
Because with all of that information, if there was even, because I feel like there's a lot of mainstream that promotes negative. It's not just hip hop, like country music promotes drinking and
right,
cheating and so on. And then with rock music, it's the rebellion as
right,
well with that, or even with love songs where they're suggesting stalking and so on.
right,
So there's a lot of that in a lot of different music. But the point is, like, hip hop tends to be the music of the youth. And so it's one of those things where, um, even when I was growing up, I remember my grandmother being like, "Oh, you can't watch MTV. That's the devil's channel," and so on. It's
right,
just, it's gotten to a point where it's like, it's too extreme. Like, there's no, like, I remember growing up with my parents, they had songs like Brick House or different things. Like, you
right,
didn't know exactly what it was talking about, but
right,
as you got older, like, oh,
right.
that's what they mean. And with today's music, there isn't that. It's not thinly veiled. It's straight up. They're telling you exactly what acts and things to do. And even there's rappers that teach you how to scam people. So
Yeah, it's bad.
on another level, like, I love that you're doing music that's going to encourage people to do things more positively. And I wonder, have you ever, like, since you've made that transition, not only in your music, but also in your personal life, you actually left America and now you live in Israel.
Right,
What was that like? Because, from the outside in, I did grow up abroad. So I moved to America as a 12-year-old. So I kind of did it backwards. So I'm wondering, as an adult, moving your family to Israel, what was that transition like? And what made you think, or what encouraged you to make that transition to go to that extreme in a way? Because you could
well,
just stayed here and
right, that's
did
true,
that.
that's true. And
Yeah.
in fact, I think from a business perspective, it probably even would have been better, to be in America, especially for me. But I will say this. I always say, when I'm asked this, I haven't been asked, exactly like that, but I've been asked, in a ballpark type of way, like, why Israel? Why would you do that? And, especially looking, like I said, it would have been better for me to be in America from a career standpoint. However, I always say like this, if you wanted to get into the fashion world, right? People who are really dedicated to what they believe in themselves, they believe in their dreams, they will pick up and leave everything and go to Paris and rough it out to go be in Paris because they believe, or New York, even New York, because that's where their dreams. If they want to be in entertainment of any sort, they are going to give up everything and throw everything throughout to follow their dreams and move to LA because they want to be in Hollywood or they want to be in the entertainment industry of some fashion. For me, I wanted spirituality that much and I wanted God that much that I felt like a place that was conducive to satisfy that yearning was to be here in Israel, right? Obviously, because it was a natural path of the religion that I was choosing. But even when you come here, this is this is a center for not only Jews but also Christians and Muslims are also here in this place because there's something in the air in this place that breathes spirituality, right? So
Mm,
not even those are not the only religions. I'm saying there's even more, but this has become a base
right.
for a lot of people because there's something very, very spiritual. So if a person who as a person who wanted to pursue that, it was like nothing else. I want it more than I want to be entertainment, more than I want my career, more than I want, to be even connected to friends and family, is to be here in this place that I believe in so much, that the future of the world happens here in this place. So I think that
Mm,
it was like sort of a no-brainer as I'm like picking up and I'm going through the Bible again and I'm looking at just the importance. One of the biggest things, if you have a friend and that person becomes your best friend, you not only start, making the same jokes, you start laughing at the same things, you develop the same interest, and you start to like have desires and you start to love the same things. You'll always have your differences, but there's a certain when the friendship is a really, really close one, when you're really attached, you start to love and
mhm.
admire and want the same things as your friend. And I was spending so much time with God and praying and spending so much time that I started desiring also the same thing. And once I realized the importance of being in Israel and how important this place was to God and how he set it apart, he sanctified it, whatever, I had to be here. It was just like not even a question anymore about what to do.
Yeah. So, what was
So
the move like to
yeah.
go from Seattle, which is known for being a very liberal, everybody come as
Right.
you are type of area, at least in
Right.
America? That's how
No.
how I
Yeah.
think of Seattle, and then go to the mecca of all religions and very conservative in that way as
Right.
well. Like, how was that and how did your wife and family transition as well with all these
It's
changes?
very good. The kids did the easiest, right? Because they were very young. My eldest was 7. Next after her was a 3-year-old. So the rest of the kids down, I had 4 at the time when I moved. We had 2 that were born here. So for us at the beginning, you go through everything of just like, okay, wow, I didn't realize I didn't know that much Hebrew. So you're trying to get, and like you said, it's just a major culture shock of just the whole way. Like I always say, like, Seattle is very passive aggressive, you know, very like everybody come as you are. We love everyone, or unless you don't love what everybody else loves, and then you're like the enemy. So it's a very, very interesting place of how it's like that. And in Israel, it's almost it's almost the exact opposite. Like we're not gonna be friends
Mm.
until there has been an aggressive encounter first, right? So it's like almost like the opposite type of thing. Like in Seattle, it's like it's lovey dovey, and it can be very hard on the back end. Over here, it's like very hard on the front end, and then you break through and you see everybody's really soft. So it's a very interesting
Okay.
culture shocking and getting used to certain things, getting used to personal space. Especially in the more religious circles, it's almost like there's such a brotherhood that everybody's just bumping up against each other all the time. And where I come from, sometimes that means that you want a box. So like, so it took a little bit for my shoe getting stepped on and getting bumped and getting pushed out of the way to get into places to realize that it's like, it's a very interesting thing because of the, and I had the privilege of learning this by speaking to someone else on my own podcast about the fact that Jews don't like to stand in lines. You don't really see it until you get here to Israel. Like there's no such thing as a line. You know what I mean? There's no single file anything. But because of the Holocaust, standing in line to the gas chamber, and the trauma that there's done to people.
Mm.
So a lot of people here do not stand in lines and have been raised that way. Jews don't stand in lines. So that's it, and I understand it. It's just very hard to get used to when you come from a place where it's like you don't get served unless you're in line. You know what I mean? Over here, it's just like
Yeah, right.
whoever starts talking first gets served. So there was definitely some cultural differences. My wife also too. But I think she even adapted much faster than I did, and I also had to adapt
Yeah.
to being well known and being famous, which I didn't also expect. I left Seattle as like, man can't be a prophet in his own hometown. I was just a regular guy. I went to Israel and have reporters at my house at 10 o'clock at night, banging, trying to get interviews. And I had no idea to expect and what I was going to walk into neither. So I had a lot of extra adjustments to make.
Now, were there any adjustments as far as race as well?
Mhm.
Because I would imagine that that would be a big difference as well for not just you, but also for your wife as well.
Yeah,
Like, what was that like?
absolutely. That has been like an interesting journey because in America you don't get that as much, which you do, but you don't. I didn't catch it really till you get over here, and it's like people are very, very, you know, closed off and only have been in their own neighborhoods and only seen their kind. So like I always say, like if you encounter racism in America, that's usually attached to like, 400 years of a way that people have been perceiving you. It goes into the way that you've been portrayed in the media, the way we allow ourselves to be portrayed in the media. All of those things contribute to why a person has a certain prejudice towards you. In this world, you don't need all that. You just need to show up and look different than everybody else. That's it. You know what I mean? And it's already nobody here knows about slavery of it. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure more in the non-religious, what I'm saying, but like, in the circles that I encountered, people had no idea how black people got to America. You understand? Like they have no idea. They're just like, you look
Mhm.
different than me, and I'm calling it out. You know what I'm saying? How'd you get here? And it's things like, for me, I don't get as much because, like I said, a lot of people know who I am, but my kids have to get it from other kids. Kids are very cruel. So there's a lot of damage
Mhm.
repair that you have to do there and educating the parents that like, okay, I know this is Israel and everybody's just rough, but like this can damage a kid if they're growing up, if they're being called names and they're like, and they don't even think like that
Mhm.
because it's like, everybody gets bullied, man. It's okay. Like, and it's like, no, stop. No, you cannot do that. You need
Right,
to
right.
teach your kids that they can't, behave this way. So, it's definitely been
Mhm.
some adjusting and working that out in your mind that where it's coming from because racism and dealing with prejudice from people. Sometimes if a person, our first natural instinct is like, boom, I need to handle this, I need to go, and it's like, first let me figure out where this is even coming from, and it takes a lot of prayer and a lot of
Mhm.
working on yourself to get to that place to realize like, why would the person even not know that it's not okay to say something like that? You know what I mean? So we
Right,
definitely had to
right.
deal with that in major ways and sit down with rabbis. The interesting thing is like, it's lay people. The more and more the person is really connected, meaning that they're not just religious on the
Mm.
outside, I mean they're really connected. You don't see such things, you don't hear of such things.
Right.
So it's definitely been an adjustment trying to get the kids in schools and not being able to get in certain schools because of your color. And it's one of those things where it's like, wow, that sounds so crazy. But they also didn't let this person in because their wig was too long, and this one they didn't let in because
Mm.
their grandparents aren't religious. And so this one, like, so it's a lot of
Oh,
different
wow.
type of
Yeah.
discrimination. So once you're just like one of the many, it takes off some of the steam of just like feeling like they're doing it because I'm
Yeah.
black. Well, that's like that's one thing you have. You know what I'm saying? That if you didn't have that, it'd be a different reason why you're disqualified from over here. So, but I'd be lying if I said that even made up a significant percentage of what my whole entire journey has been. It's been very, very small and insignificant.
Oh,
So
that's
that's a
great.
good part.
That is good because I was curious about that because of the timing. Since it was like 2016, I read that you moved over there. I was like, well, that was a lot of stuff was going on here
Right.
with race relations as well. So I was just
Right.
curious if there was any of that that led you to want to hurry up and leave,
No.
or also how you were received once you got there. But definitely being a VIP helps, no
Yeah, I guess.
matter what side
I
of the
guess so.
equation you're on.
I
Yeah.
would say on that though is like
Hmm.
the thing about it is like this. I was saying over here is very, very interesting because that world and this world is they're so different. They're so world apart. And part of it is when people do have their prejudices, against us. Like we have to realize that although it's unfair for anybody to be treated with any type of racism or prejudice or bigotry or anything like that. But one thing that we allowed, starting off where we started our conversation, is the way we've allowed ourselves to be portrayed in the media, the way we allow ourselves to
Hmm.
be portrayed in the movies and all these other things for the quick check. We destroy the whole entire culture and expect for people to be like, treat us like regular dignified human beings when the only thing that they see You know what I'm saying? For a lot of people, I remember asking my friends like who were African and the Samoan kids, you know what I mean? Like why their parents were like that. Like they wouldn't let them hang out with black people like that. Like, you know, from the old country, like after a while they get like, you know, starts to wear off. They start to intermingle a little bit. But that the older generations that were the first generations of America are very much so warning their kids to stay away from the black kids. And I wanted to know why. They said because before we come there, all we see on the TV is black people doing crime and being bad people. So in other countries, that's already what they have. The perception of us is because part of it is what we allow the media to control that narrative. And number two, we do it to ourselves. We allow that to be the way that we're portraying ourselves. So once people see that, like, wow, hold on, this person knows how to speak or whatever, it's offensive initially. Yes. When am I supposed to speak like a clown? But that,
Like
but
I have
you
a
know what I'm
college
saying?
degree.
Like, but
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
perception of what they've been
Mhm.
showed over and over and over again. And it's up to us to not necessarily try to fight it on the front end, and like, but really to go and show, like, listen, we're human beings, proper human beings, we're upright human beings, and we also have this about us and this gift and this talent, and I think that you know that's been a real big like push on my end. Is just like one thing we're not going to do. When I talk to my wife and we're not going to let anybody say that, you know, I'm not going to snap on somebody so they can say, oh yeah, see, I knew the whole time, you know, no. You know, that's
Right.
not, I'm not giving anybody any of those wishes. So.
Right. No, I'm right there with you. That's part of the reason I do my show is because I know firsthand how many jobs I've had to turn down as an actor myself, just because I'm not doing that. I'm not going to portray my race in that way. I hate when I'm on jobs and I'm portrayed as a single mom. So I always wear, like, even if I don't get a husband or a dad, I always wear my wedding stuff. I'm like, no, no, you're not going to keep perpetuating that stereotype. But even more so, like you mentioned, some of it we do to ourselves, and that's like part of the hip hop community, or even some of the movies and TV shows and so on. And I had a music producer on, and he made a point of saying that the amount of cuss words and illegal stuff that they put into hip hop music that actually end up winning awards would never happen in pop music or other genres. So it's definitely a machine that has been created since going back to the 1800s. That's how they were able to so quickly enslave us and portray us as not being human. And then even Nazis, they came to America to learn from us how to dehumanize the Jews. So it's a thing. It's a thing we're good at, but we need to stop it because it's really putting a lot of pressure on us to have to not be the angry black woman or the aggressive male, or so many of those things is why we're getting killed and the streets are becoming hashtags. So I love that you address that as well, that's something that needs to be changed, and also put it on us as well to not accept all those opportunities because they're not really helping us move that wealth gap forward. So, I would have to bring this up because so much has gone on during the time that you've been there since 2016 with COVID, as well as the recent issues that's been going on with Palestine and so on. And I'm curious, how are you able to even navigate during those tough issues? Like, is your art going to show any of that with your upcoming album? Do you have any plans to even address some of those things that has been going on there? As Americans, we're kind of only given a certain point of view depending on which news station, but you're there and you're obviously an artist. So artists have a way of portraying things in a way that really give voice to those that maybe would not otherwise be heard. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on all of the different things that's been going on there.
Yeah, I have a great quality, which happens to also be my weakness, like it is for many of us. Like my greatest strength is my weakness, and I get so tunnel vision, like, which is good because it helps me like hone in on what I want to do. And then there's things that you know that you miss out. You know, I will definitely admit that I don't know enough about the Palestinian side, and I will not, absolutely will not, accept it from the news. I'm not going to hear from the news. What I have been able to glean has been from writing with taxi drivers. And I asked them the questions, and I've got very mixed reviews, to be quite honest. It's not so clear in terms of of even the origins of where the Palestinian people come from, the connection to Israel. That's not so clear. I just wanted to hear from the people. So I'm going to ask
Right.
the taxi drivers that were taking me when I spent my first 2.5 years. I was here in Israel. I lived in Jerusalem. So now I live in a predominantly Jewish area. So any taxi driver, I have a car now, but at the beginning, the first 2.5 years, I was taking taxis, and I didn't care. Some people were very, had fear, and so they would only ride with Jewish driver. I rode with whatever. I would order a taxi from whoever, and I would get in and I would start asking questions. They asked me questions. I want to ask them questions also, and but I
Mhm.
didn't get a sense of a I got a sense of people feeling like, and nobody had to hide anything from me because you know I was from America and they see me as an American, and that was a great opportunity to ask a person who's genuinely asking you questions. You can say and give over whatever you felt was important, which you felt was from your heart, or any propaganda or whatever you wanted to. But what I got was from most people was just a sense of like, this is just some straight up government, them going back and forth, and it don't have nothing to do with the people, and that's that
Mhm.
was what I was able to glean from most people. So I feel like, you know whether it's our side, it's their side, whatever the case is, I think that these are the powers that be stirring this up, allowing this to unfortunately people lose their lives. I'm not saying that everything's 100% wrong on the news, but I'm just saying that a good amount of it I don't think is really trustworthy. I know that I was in a karate class with my kids, and all of a sudden the sirens start going off and we hear boom and we have to run to, like, that's my reality of my situation of what we had to do. And for a few days we were, on edge. We had to fill up our shelter. We all have a bomb shelter in our houses. Most houses do. And it was filled with, food and water and everything else. The kids weren't going to school, and we stayed close to make sure that, not far from here, we've seen things. Not only that, there's been a lot of wildfires going on, that it hasn't been that hot for them to constantly happen. There's some suspicion right now that they keep being lit. I'm seeing forests on fire. I spend a lot of time out in the
Mm.
forest to go meditate, so I've already seen a few fires, near me. So this whole thing is really, really tough, and I think it's way too complicated to be sold in a story on the news as if everybody knows exactly what's going on without dealing with the people. It's just to make great press. So for me
Mhm.
personally, like I said, I'm not gonna say that I know everything about this conflict, because I know what's going on. My tunnel vision tells me, right, that at the end of the
Mhm.
day,
Mhm.
that the indigenous people to this land is written out, and the entire importance of what this land even is because of the Bible. Whether a person believes it or they don't believe it, the only significance of this land, it doesn't show up in the Quran. It's definitely not in any other books, right? So from that perspective, to me, it's very, very clear about what's supposed to be, or whether it's supposed to be right now, whether it's at a later time or whatever. But this is the land of the Jewish people. Archaeology shows that. So I don't know what all these different arguments are that are going on about that, because it's very, very clear. There's archaeology that dates back to thousands of years. How come it only works when you want to show something else about America or somewhere else in the world, or Greece or somewhere else, but the archaeology and everything else, that doesn't matter over here? So it's like, it's crazy. So that's pretty much my take on it. I've pulled up to sites. I remember coming home one day and hearing rap music, and it was all the Palestinian workers that were doing a remodel on one of the houses over there. They do a lot of the building work and different things like that, and they were all listening to my music. So that was a wonderful opportunity for me
Mm.
to, like, go over and take pictures with these guys or whatever, Palestinian guys. So it's like, I don't really think, I think that it's being sold in a way. And like, how is it that after all this crazy conflict that went on, the moment the peace treaty goes and is done, then all of a sudden all the workers are back in the neighborhood, they see Palestinians again? It's just like, come on, like that quick, they were so upset, and then that quick it's like,
Yeah.
it's okay. Like, I don't know, I don't buy it. That's all I'm saying. I'm not buying it.
No, it sounds very familiar here as well, because it's a lot of that, I think so as well, with we've had all these different issues for a long time, and the people of color here have kind of been very isolated and segregated from each other. And now with what happened with George Floyd, I feel like a lot of us have come together and just realized we're stronger together. And like you said, media will keep perpetrating things and make it seem like it's us versus them, when honestly, if we just all came together and just worked it out, we probably wouldn't have any of these issues. And so it's a matter of them just, they need to sell the time slots, and just keep people scared. So of course, people of color tend to be the bad guys, or the different groups that are being hated on here and there to keep that images going.
Absolutely.
So what is up for you in the future? So I heard you mention your podcast. So you have your different podcasts that you're doing, but you also have a concert. I hear you're getting ready to start traveling again. Everything's opening back up. So that's exciting. So share with us all that's coming up and where we can keep up and follow and come to your concerts and all of the great stuff.
Thank you so much. So I do have a new podcast called The Deal. The Deal with Nissim Black. So that's streaming on all the Spotify platforms. And that's been really fun for me. Like, especially like you could just like do it from home. I'm in my studio, I'm in my home. Nobody knows I'm in my socks. But the whole, the whole thing of it is it's like being able to like technology, be able to have great conversations with people. And a lot of people like, where I'm like going out of my way to talk to people where people would have been like, no, that's an odd conversation, so that's really fun for me. Gives me opportunity to be on the other side, because I'm always on the other side of the microphone. And music right now, I'm just working on music right now for a play. I can't speak so much about it, but it's an off-Broadway play right now that I'm working on the music for. So I'm really, really excited about that. There is also new music coming. So I have new music, and I'm really like blending styles. I like, as much as like I've gone back into doing much more like hip hop style, much more like trap positive type stuff, but I really miss dancing. I like get back into my dancing, my two-step. Like I'm old school. I want to hear
I'm right there with you. I can't do these TikTok dances. I'm like, that's not dancing. That's like cheerleading dancing weirdness. I don't know. I want to be able to like have a dance battle like you were mentioning.
Right.
Like old school stuff. Right. Yeah.
So I
be able to do the kid and play or something.
Exactly. So I'm feeling like right now I just want to get back to like doing stuff that where it's clear. Also, I really got discouraged. I'm not gonna lie, and no disrespect per se, but a little bit disrespect intended. But like that little Nas X song that came out recently, like really threw me for a loop, and I just really felt like, I don't want to be in a place where this is going on. You know what I'm saying? This type of portrayal of who we are, just even of humanity. It ain't so much about what he decides to do with his body, but it's just the way that comes over, the Satanism, the shoe that followed up, all of that really disturbed my soul. You know what I mean? And I was like, man, I don't want to be on a playlist with this guy. You understand what I'm saying? I'm being honest. That's how I felt about it.
Yeah.
Like, Yeah. And so I just been really like, just trying to get myself much more. And I mean, like I said, it's a lot of stuff, like, as I mentioned before, but like, that was like one of the last straws for me, and feeling like, man, I don't know what's going to be, but I want to be as far away from that as I could possibly be, And,
well, I can understand from your standpoint, being that you are an Orthodox rapper and so on. And I think I actually know the Little Nas X song you're referring to. And I think it was the way that media tried to portray it as well as that it was so anti-Christianity. But I think it's more on the sense of like, for a long time, the LGBTQ community was being beaten down by Christian groups, by different religious groups. So this was like his way of expressing how violent and how vicious they had been towards the gay community. And just, I do think it was a little extreme. Yeah. I would agree with you on that point. But I also know, being on the receiving end of being in my husband's white. And so I know what it's like when people can use the Bible against your relationship. Right. So I could feel that anger in him, and I could see, because there was like a follow-up video where he's showing where he's at prom and nobody will talk to him. No one will play with or dance with him, and just feeling in the closet and so on. So I could see the pain of what it's like to be ridiculed, but I understand also on your other side, like on the side of that, you're coming from religious land and he's coming from complete opposite. So I
Like
could
I
see
said,
how that would be like, I don't want to be on the same playlist, but I think
it really
they were
wasn't.
really using it in the wrong way.
Really, it's not about what he decides to do with his body in terms of that. It's the betrayal, the images of the satanic being. You know, I'm saying whatever. I don't go around smashing people because of their sexual orientation. There's plenty things that the Bible call a sin. Okay, but the fact of how that came out and the human blood inside the shoe and all that, like that goes. And I'm not a Christian, so these are Christians were very upset about it. You know, many Orthodox Jews don't even know that such a thing exists. I just happen to be in the world of hip hop, so everybody needed to make sure that I knew this was out there as soon as it came out. You know what I mean? And I just felt like these are the things that I wouldn't want my children being involved in, and I don't want, you know what I'm saying? It was a very, very dark, and it was a reminder for me that's not a world I want to enter into. You know what I mean? So that's what I mean.
And I agree, because I mean, I felt like it was on the same level as WAP video in that sense, where I was just like, whoa,
right.
I don't want my kid to ever see this either. You know what I mean? Like I was just like on the same level of it was just a little too crude, a little too the visuals were way too much. I agree with you 100% on that. Like it was definitely not needed to get the point across. But then when I realized what those images were meant, I was like, oh, I can see what he means, but you're making more enemies.
Start a podcast,
get more
that's all I'm saying. Start a podcast.
You get more honey with butter. Or what is it? You get more bees with honey than you do with vinegar. And that was very vinegary. Like, you're not helping the team. Because I think if he went the right way, you would be like, oh no, he can be on my playlist. But he did it the wrong way. So I agree with you on that. I don't want my kid to see it.
He should live a long life. He should be happy and healthy. I was very, very disturbing for me, and that was one of the straws for me. So
no, I understand, because I used to do. I danced in a lot of different videos, but I never did hip hop videos because, like, nope, I don't do the scantily clad stuff. But I remember when I saw that video and she had to like also engage in kissing, I was like, what? You just show up to work to dance, and next thing you know, you have to have, like, I'm not doing all of that. Like, they have to do too much. Like, they don't pay you enough to do all the stuff that they're asking you to do, or to now your image is in this certain way. And like you mentioned earlier, like, we're all paying for it. And the way that Israel might have portrayed you is the same way Middle America is going to portray us. Or like anytime we travel abroad, they're going to make those assumptions. And one of the joys I had is when I was growing up, a lot of the American TV shows were Dynasty and Dallas. They portrayed us very, very nice. We had a better marketing team, I would say.
For sure. Even
it was Cosby, Diane Carroll.
Even the Cosby, I don't know what he did in his personal life, but the Cosby was a great
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. No cussing. Like you mentioned before, all of that. And it was a positive image, and showing moving from Philly and going to California and the changes and the different cultural changes with that, but also addressing the more important issues that were going on as well, with like racism, abortion, all the different things they covered on that show as well. So anyway, but you also have concerts coming up as well.
Yes, I have concerts.
So when does that start, and where will you be traveling? Are you
July?
In America?
Yeah, July to start, and I'll be primarily East Coast, just only East Coast, I think, on this trip. And then I think also too, I'll be, as we move further into the summer, almost into the winter, I'll be in Hungary and probably in Europe also too. Dates are all going to start showing up on social media very, very soon, all the dates. But I'll be in New York. I have a show in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, different places in Pennsylvania, and also Philadelphia for speaking engagements. So I'm excited to be back on the road. I don't know what I'm going to do. I miss my family. Like I God forced me to be at home more, right? And now I can't get enough of my family, my kids. Before I got on with you, I was playing Monopoly with my family, like, stuff that, if you wouldn't have had,
that's a 4-hour game.
You wouldn't have had 2020, that, you know what I'm saying, that you wouldn't have even did that. My son won, but that's only because I had to leave early. But
you're like, by default. Let's just make that clear. It was by default. So that's great. No, I mean, I think with the pandemic, it did force a lot of people that were always on the road or with the music industry. It's a lot of traveling, a lot of things you have to do in person. So it gave you that opportunity to do a lot of things at home. Do you think in the future you'll be able to kind of hybrid that still, so you can still find that time for family time? Because It's got to be. I mean, they're at that
Yeah.
age because I know you said there were 7 in 2016, and you have 6 kids, so maybe you could take
Right.
half with you,
Right.
half with the mom. Just kidding.
Right. Well, God willing, there's
Yeah.
another big opportunity, big acting opportunity that may sit me here in Israel for quite a while. So I'm hoping that that comes for 2 reasons. It's a great opportunity, and I'll be able to be home and be working with my family. So we'll see. I'm definitely
We'll
trying
break a
to figure
leg.
out more ways to at least, consolidate all the trips so there's not so much sporadic travel. To where it's
Mm.
just tour at a time, and that that'll give me more time to be home with my family, which I really like to be doing. So
Well, happy belated Father's Day on that note.
thank you very much.
And thank you again for all this wonderful information about what you have going on and how you got here. So is there any advice you would give to anybody starting out, just getting started, whether they decide to go the lighter route of
Mhm.
being something we can listen to in front of our kids or not,
Right.
for that matter?
I think, the main thing is, I mean, that's all I can speak to is just that, it's a very, very powerful thing. I've said it other times, I'll say it again, that, having the responsibility of having people being attentive to you and listening to you for 2 to 3 minutes of their time, which, even at one point, you have such power over that person, even if over the mood, over their feelings, over their emotions, that you have an amazing opportunity. We all have an amazing opportunity to be able to build and to give more life instead of giving more death. So I think that it's something that's very, very huge, and music can't be taken lightly. So I think that that's always should be a part of the consideration of is how is this going to make a person feel? What is it going to do to advance and to help a person
Mm.
when you decide to make music? And how would you know, what do you want to do at the end of the day is ultimately to be able to be a person that changes other people's lives, to really change other people's lives of what you're doing. So, I think that that's the starting point. After that, then, it's a lot of technical things of making the right choices with the songs, right cadence, right hooks, right everything else. But those things I think are secondary to understanding like the base and the foundation of it is changing lives with music.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you again for being my guest today. And if there's anything else you'd like to share, feel free to do so now. Otherwise, this has been great. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it also. So thank you for having me on, and God willing, see you either in America or here.
Yeah, East Coast. Wait, if you have any North Carolina ones, I'll be there.
Okay.
I'm so ready for live music. Oh my goodness, it's been too
I
long.
can't wait. I can't wait.
And knowing it's child friendly, I might bring a new fan with
All
me.
right. Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so
All
much.
right. Well, that was my pleasure. Thanks again.
Okay, you too. Have a good one.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in to the E Spot with Camille, and check out Nissim Black. Make sure you follow him on Instagram, Facebook, everywhere, and also listen out for his podcast as well as YouTube. And thank you again for checking out Camille Cower.